Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Aaliyah Jackson walked down the narrow hallway leading to the Jiu Jitsu gym at Thompson Martial Arts Academy in Chicago. Each step echoed off the polished concrete floor, an echo of her years of fighting prejudice and injustice. Since her childhood in Atlanta, she had learned to fight, but not just for herself, for every black woman society had tried to diminish, for every condescending look, for every teacher or mentor who had doubted her unnecessarily. Jiu-Jitsu had always been her therapy, her outlet. Its precise movements and discipline allowed her to channel anger that had been pent up for too long. But today wasn't just any class. She could feel it in the air, thick with tension. The teacher, Richard Thompson, wasn't just known for his expertise, he was also known for his arrogance and barely disguised racial prejudice. Some students admired him, others feared him. Aaliyah, however, had only one thing on her mind: to compete with him and show him that the color of one's skin mattered nothing in the face of talent and discipline. The room was bathed in natural light from the large windows, and the smell of tatami mats permeated the air, a mixture of rubber and disinfectant. The students were warming up, some laughing and chatting, others absorbed in their stretches. Aaliyah looked at the faces around her, confident young men, focused women, all ready to follow the master's instructions. But no one seemed prepared for what was about to happen. When Thompson saw her enter, his smile stretched into an expression of subtle disdain. His eyes seemed to assess, gauge, diminish. He made a remark loudly, loud enough for the other students to hear. "Well, I wonder how you'll keep up, little one." The words were venomous, but Aaliyah showed no emotion. She remembered the advice of her former teacher, Sensei Marcus Brown: never let the hatred of others become your fear. Transform it into strength. She settled down on the tatami, adjusted her white gi, and took a deep breath. Her heart beat with determination and calm, a mixture of confidence and focus. This wasn't just another jiu-jitsu class. This was a battle for respect, for equality, and to prove, once and for all, that talent and perseverance trumped racism and arrogance. In this tense silence, the confrontation was about to begin. And Aaliyah knew that today, no one in this room would emerge unscathed from this lesson. Aaliyah Jackson walked through the door of the jiu-jitsu room, her measured steps echoing on the rubber floor. Her crisp white gi seemed almost glowing under the fluorescent lights, and every movement exuded a quiet confidence. The students paused for a moment, some eyeing her curiously, others with almost mocking skepticism. The teacher, Richard Thompson, was waiting for her in the center of the tatami. His gaze, cold and appraising, slid over her like a silent judgment. "Well," he said, raising an eyebrow, his voice betraying a touch of mischievous amusement, "looks like someone thinks they can follow me." A murmur rippled through the room. Several students stifled nervous laughter, thinking Aaliyah would lower her head in intimidation. But she remained motionless, staring straight ahead, her dark eyes shining with implacable determination. "Show me your basic techniques," Thompson ordered, pointing at the tatami with his finger, as if to openly challenge her. Aaliyah took her stance, inhaling deeply. Every move she made was precise and fluid, as if she were gliding across the floor. She executed the holds, dodges, and reversals taught by Sensei Marcus Brown, her former teacher in Atlanta. The students began to murmur, surprised by her obvious mastery. Thompson frowned, his brows red with anger and frustration. He hadn't expected to see such skill. He tried to interrupt her with a swift movement to throw her off balance, but Aaliyah anticipated every move, dodging with almost unnerving precision. You're not normal," he stammered, his words betraying a mixture of surprise and wounded pride. Aaliyah didn't answer. She let her movements speak for her. Every dodge, every flip, every position was a silent message: I deserve respect, and you can't diminish me. The students held their breath. Some had never seen someone dominate a teacher with such calm and poise. In the heavy silence, Aaliyah understood that this moment wasn't just about her, it would be a turning point for everyone in the room. Thompson clenched his fists, visibly frustrated by Aaliyah's impeccable control. He straightened, his shoulders stiff, and fixed his eyes on her with icy intensity. "Do you really think you can outsmart me in front of everyone?" he snapped, his voice shaking with annoyance. "Let's see if you can handle something real." He stepped forward, ready to test her with an advanced technique, a move designed to unbalance and humiliate her. The students held their breath, some tense, others curious to see Aaliyah's response. But she showed no fear. Her memories of her intensive training with Sensei Marcus Brown came flooding back. Every attack had to be anticipated, every movement controlled, every reversal carefully considered. Thompson attempted a throw, quick and brutal, but Aaliyah bent her knees, dodged the direct contact, and fluidly redirected his movement, using her weight and strength against him. The room erupted in a collective murmur. "How?" Thompson stammered, flushed with anger, unable to hide his humiliation. Aaliyah remained calm. Her movements were precise, almost choreographed, but they carried an undeniable power. Every time Thompson tried to overpower her, she turned her strength against him, putting him in positions where he could no longer react without risking a fall. You're good," he finally blurted out, his wounded pride struggling with reality. The other students watched, fascinated. Some exchanged incredulous glances, realizing that the young woman before them had just transformed a mundane exercise into a masterful demonstration of technique and mental mastery. For Aaliyah, it wasn't a personal victory, but a silent message to everyone: triumph isn't achieved through brute force or arrogance alone. Discipline, precision, and perseverance always prevail. She knew the confrontation was only just beginning, but already the professor was beginning to understand that he had underestimated the one he thought he could easily humiliate. The silence in the room was almost palpable. Every move Aaliyah made seemed calculated, precise, yet seemingly simple. Thompson tried to regain the initiative, but every attack he launched backfired. Aaliyah remembered everything her former teacher, Sensei Marcus Brown, had taught her in Atlanta. Jiu Jitsu was not only an art of the body, but above all an art of the mind. Reading your opponent, anticipating their moves, using your own strength against them, that was the key. Thompson, accustomed to intimidating with authority and experience, was becoming increasingly unpredictable, which was exactly what Aaliyah expected. With one fluid movement, she dodged an attempted throw and followed it up with a perfectly executed armbar. The room held its breath. You're anticipating everything," Thompson growled, red with frustration. Aaliyah didn't respond with words. Her actions spoke for herself. Every block, every reversal, every movement demonstrated a discipline and confidence that commanded respect. The students around her watched, mouths agape. Some whispered among themselves, "I've never seen anyone do that, not even Sensei Thompson." She continued to exploit his weaknesses. When he tried to right himself, she used her own strength to knock him off balance again, placing him in humiliating positions without ever inflicting any real pain. She knew that sometimes humiliating someone without violence was enough to teach them the greatest lesson. Every move she made sent a clear message to the entire room: respect can't be commanded. It must be earned. And Aaliyah Jackson had just proven it, calmly and confidently, in front of everyone. Thompson, panting and frustrated, was beginning to realize that he wasn't just facing a student, he was facing a force of nature, a fighter who wasn't afraid to stand up to him. Thompson struggled to his feet, his face flushed and his fists clenched. His usual arrogance wavered under the silent humiliation. He attempted an assertive gesture to regain control, but every move he made was anticipated and countered by Aaliyah with icy precision. The students around them could no longer look away. Some exchanged glances of surprise, others of admiration. They had never seen a teacher put in such a position by a single student, let alone with such calm and control. You are," Thompson began, but no words could come out correctly. His lips trembled slightly, a sign that his pride was deeply hurt. Aaliyah didn't answer. She remained focused, aware that the teacher's anger and arrogance were her greatest weapons if she knew how to harness them. Her movements were measured, precise, but with a quiet power that commanded respect. Every dodge, every reversal sent a message to both the teacher and the students: she would never be intimidated. The whispers became more audible in the room. It's incredible, she completely dominates him. Looks like he underestimated Aaliyah from the start. Even the most experienced students stood there gaping, unable to look away. Thompson was beginning to understand that his natural authority, based on fear and experience, was no match for someone with superior mental discipline and strategy. Aaliyah, however, remained calm. She knew she had to maintain the tension, never rush things, and let the professor reveal his own weaknesses. She wasn't just trying to win this confrontation, she wanted everyone in the room to understand that no amount of arrogance, no amount of prejudice, could overcome talent, preparation, and self-confidence. For the first time, Thompson truly wavered in his role as master, and the entire room felt that power had changed hands, if only for a few moments. The silence in the room was heavy. Every student held their breath, unable to look away from what was unfolding on the mat. Thompson, flushed with anger and frustration, desperately tried to regain control, but Aaliyah, calm as the waters of a tranquil lake, read him like an open book. "So, you really think you can beat me in front of everyone?" he growled, his voice trembling with wounded pride. Aaliyah didn't respond with words. She didn't need to speak. Her actions spoke for her. She dodged his attempted throw, slipped behind him, and in one fluid, precise movement, sent him to the ground in a position where he couldn't move. A perfectly executed arm lock left him completely immobilized. The students burst into applause, some even standing up, shocked and fascinated by what they had just seen. Thompson's pride, once so strong, had been shattered in front of everyone. His mouth opened, searching for words, but none came. Aaliyah leaned in slightly, her eyes staring into his. "Respect discipline. Respect technique. And above all, respect those who deserve your attention, regardless of their color or appearance." Every word echoed through the room, louder than any physical attack. The students understood that what they had just seen was not just a Jiu Jitsu demonstration, but a life lesson. Thompson stood slowly, his face etched with humiliation and anger. But even he knew, deep down, that he had just learned a lesson no book or lecture could have taught him. Aaliyah, however, remained humble. She put away her GI, adjusted her sleeves, and took a step back, leaving the teacher and students to digest the magnitude of what had just happened. For all those present, that day would remain etched in their memory, the young black woman who ridiculed the racist jiu-jitsu teacher in front of everyone, not out of revenge, but out of skill, mastery, and dignity. The silence that followed Thompson's humiliation slowly turned into an excited hubbub. The students exchanged incredulous glances, some whispering among themselves, others displaying a mixture of respect and admiration for Aaliyah. "I've never seen anyone do that, not even Sensei Thompson," one of the students muttered, his eyes wide. "She's incredible," added another, unable to hide her wonder. Aaliyah, for her part, wasn't looking for praise. She simply observed the reactions, aware that what she had accomplished went far beyond a mere technical victory. She had just shown that respect is earned through discipline, mastery, and determination, not fear or arrogance. A few students, inspired by his courage, approached timidly. "Aaliyah, how did you anticipate her every move?" asked a young man, impressed by her technique. "It's practice, focus, and experience," she replied calmly. "And above all, never let anyone underestimate you." Even the quietest among the students seemed transformed. The fear and awe Thompson usually inspired were gone, replaced by a new example of what true leadership and competence looked like. Thompson, humiliated but clear-headed, began to realize that his authority was based solely on fear and arrogance, and that this young woman had just challenged it in front of everyone. The other students understood that the room was no longer just a place for technical learning, it was a space where respect and dignity had finally been restored. Aaliyah, however, remained calm. She knew this was only the beginning of her influence in the room. The admiring glances and appreciative murmurs from the students were her true reward, far more so than pride or revenge against a racist teacher. After the public humiliation, Thompson tried to straighten up, his pride bruised and his pride wounded. He took a few steps across the mat, clenching his fists, and stared at Aaliyah with suppressed anger. "All right," he said in a low voice, trembling with annoyance, "show me what you can really do." But every move he attempted was anticipated and countered. Aaliyah read his intentions like an open book, exploiting every small weakness, every miscalculated move. His reversals and blocks were precise, measured, almost relentless. The students held their breath. Some were beginning to understand that the teacher was no longer the center of power in this room. The whispers were becoming more audible. He's never faced anyone like her. It's incredible, she has him completely under control. Thompson tried to use his verbal authority to intimidate, but his words seemed empty, lost in the hubbub of the students' admiring glances. The power he believed he possessed was based on fear, and that fear no longer existed. Aaliyah, aware of this new dynamic, didn't press the advantage. She moved fluidly, calmly, demonstrating that she mastered not only the technique but also the situation. Every dodge, every position she took sent a clear message. She wasn't trying to crush Thompson, but to show him that arrogance and prejudice could do nothing against skill and discipline. For the first time, Thompson felt an inner dizziness. His usual dominance was crumbling, and the entire room, once silent out of respect or fear, was now looking at him with amazement mixed with admiration for Aaliyah. The calm before the storm was setting in. Everyone knew the climax was approaching. Aaliyah, impassive, waited for the perfect moment to demonstrate that true mastery went far beyond experience or authority. It relied on preparation, patience, and self-belief. Thompson straightened one last time, his pride still flickering, but determined to reassert his authority. He glared menacingly at Aaliyah, hoping that a quick, brutal move would be enough to intimidate her. But Aaliyah, calm and focused, showed no sign of fear. She knew the professor's every move, had anticipated his intentions, and knew exactly how to exploit his weaknesses. Her eyes shone with a quiet confidence, the kind that never wavered in the face of arrogance or racism. "You think force alone is enough?" she asked softly, almost as if lecturing. "Discipline and strategy are worth much more." Thompson attempted a throw, fast and aggressive, but Aaliyah ducked, pivoted, and used her own movement against him. In an instant, he was on the ground, pinned in a position where he could no longer move safely. The students held their breath, mesmerized by the precision of each move. She followed with a series of advanced, fluidly controlled moves that sought not to hurt but to demonstrate total control. Every dodge and every reversal was a silent lesson. Respect cannot be commanded, it must be earned through skill, patience, and self-control. "It's incredible," a student whispered in a low voice. She has him completely under control," added another, his eyes wide. Thompson, breathless and humiliated, finally grasped the magnitude of what had just happened. He was no longer the undisputed master of the room. Aaliyah had just shown him, in front of the entire class, that neither arrogance nor racism could overcome competence, discipline, and respect. Aaliyah slowly stood up, adjusted her GI, and took a step back, leaving Thompson and the students to digest the lesson. She hadn't claimed victory, she hadn't sought to humiliate, her technical and mental superiority spoke for itself. For all those present that day, this moment would remain etched in their memory, the young black woman who not only beat up a racist teacher but also taught everyone the true value of respect and self-control. The silence that followed Aaliyah's final lesson gradually broke, replaced by murmurs of admiration and tentative applause that quickly grew louder. Students young and old realized they had just witnessed something exceptional. "I never thought I'd see this, not even Sensei Thompson could do this," one student breathed, his eyes shining. "She's incredible," added a young girl, inspired by Aaliyah's courage and technique. Several students approached timidly, seeking to understand, to learn, to discuss. Aaliyah responded calmly, sharing some technical advice but above all transmitting a life lesson. Every movement, every decision, every gesture counts. But the most important thing is respect, for yourself, for your partners, and for those who teach. Even students who had once feared Thompson began to understand that true authority was not based on fear or arrogance. Aaliyah's lesson was clear: competence, discipline, and courage always trump hatred and prejudice. Thompson, humiliated but lucid, watched silently. He had lost his dominance in that room, but he understood that he had just learned a valuable lesson, perhaps more important than any he had ever taught: mastery is not synonymous with authority. The students, inspired, began to follow Aaliyah, not out of fear, but out of admiration and respect. She had become a role model, a living example of strength and dignity. Even those who were initially skeptical couldn't deny the truth. Aaliyah Jackson had just transformed the room, and her influence would last long after that day. The class was drawing to a close, but the atmosphere in the room was far from ordinary. The students chatted in hushed voices, still amazed by what they had just witnessed. Everyone seemed aware that they had witnessed a display of mastery and courage that would surpass any technical lessons they had learned so far. Aaliyah Jackson put away her gi with measured slowness, adjusting the sleeves as if sealing each gesture in the room's memory. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to give a speech. Every movement, every technique, every gesture of calm and discipline had spoken for her. Thompson, sitting on the tatami, breathless and stunned, finally looked up at her. His face, red with frustration, had given way to a mixture of respect and understanding. He knew now that his usual dominance, based on arrogance and fear, was not enough. The young woman he had tried to ridicule had just taught him the greatest lesson of all: respect and authority must be earned, not imposed. The students, for their part, looked at her with admiration mixed with gratitude. Some had come to Jiu Jitsu to learn the technique, but they left with much more: a lesson in courage, discipline, and dignity. Without a word, Aaliyah walked through the door of the classroom. Behind her, Thompson and the students remained silent, each pondering what had just happened. The classroom had changed, and with it, the perception of what it meant to be a teacher, a student, and, above all, a human being worthy of respect. For Aaliyah Jackson, it wasn't fame or recognition that mattered. It was the knowledge that, through her skill and courage, she had given others the strength to respect and learn without prejudice. She had proven, silently but brilliantly, that true power lies in discipline, self-control, and dignity. And that day, in that Chicago Jiu Jitsu gym, the world had changed a little because of her.